Okay, so since we already got through the roll call, I assume you're all in the right place. This is Digital Tools for Designers, Architecture 135. This was formerly Digital Tools for Architects, and they renamed the classes. So it used to be Digital Tools for Architects 1 and 2. Now it's Digital Tools for Designers and Digital Tools for Architects. Doesn't matter what order you take it in. Some people are taking the 136 right after this, and they'll just continue through. If you're on the wait list and you're stressed out about making sure you have the correct number of units and we can't get you in this class, you're more than welcome to take the second class first. Doesn't matter what the order is. Covers different topics, etc. If you'd like to stick around and watch the beginning of the next class and decide if you want to take it, that's okay too. Question?
Yeah, I was about to ask, what time from what to what?
So this class is from 8 to 11. The next class is from 11 to 2. Okay, so it depends on your schedules and whatever, but I believe I have some open spots in that class. Hopefully you guys are all here. Yeah.
Are they both the same level?
They're both similar. This class, we're going to focus, and obviously I'm going to go through it in a second, but to answer your question in the short version, we're going to focus on the Adobe Suite, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, with some other stuff mixed in. We'll do some SketchUp, and we'll do some collaging with the combination. We'll do a little bit of AutoCAD, and so you get that kind of a taste. The second class will do primarily 3D modeling in a program called Rhinoceros, and then we'll do some rendering in V-Ray. So they're separate things. Both classes are required if you move forward in your architectural kind of career, though I've had students who just decided that one, it looked fun and they took it anyway. So you don't have to be like planning to go on in architecture, but both are ultimately required as you go further up the chain. How many people, this is their first semester ever at DVC? Couple of you. How many people are already like well-versed in architecture? You've already taken 120, that sort of thing. Okay, a few of you? Okay, most of you. All right, well, so you'll pick up on this rather quickly. So this is the fall 2015. Wow, how did that happen? Welcome back. Hope you had a great summer. It's always hard to start in mid-August. I wish we started in September, but if I'm going to get through everything I have to get through, we have to start now. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Grant Adams. I'm an associate professor of architecture here at DVC. That basically means I'm here 2 days a week. So if you come on Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, you won't see me. If you come on Monday or Wednesday, I'll be here. Like I said, I have this class in the morning. I follow it with the second of this version of class. Right after that, I have my office hours. And I'm usually here probably till about 5. I also get here really early. I'm usually here at 6. So if you need to find me, if it's Monday or Wednesday, chances are I'm here. Okay? If it's not, you won't find me. Okay? A little bit about my background, why I'm here. I've been teaching here for 9 years. I have an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley in architecture, so a Bachelor's of Arts in architecture. I have my MArch, my Master in Architecture from Berkeley as well, which is a bit of a rare combination because a lot of times people go somewhere else. I got that in 2007. While I was at Berkeley as a grad student, I was a grad student instructor in a class very similar to this, teaching computers. When I graduated and got my master's, there was an email that went out to all the people graduating that said, we have an open position at DVC. Would you be interested in come teaching this class? It was the Digital Tool for Architect class. It had run for 2 semesters as a experimental course, and I came in, got hired to teach the class, and have changed it quite dramatically from what it was initially to what it is now. So the translation is, this is my baby. I love this class. It's a really fun class, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. Okay? My email is gadams@dvc.edu. You're welcome to email me anytime you want. I will respond or I won't respond depending on my availability and what I'm doing in the rest of my life. But you're more than welcome to email me whenever. I also, shockingly, give you my phone number, right? Sometimes you're just stuck, right? And you need a little bit of help. Chances are I'm going to respond better to a text than I am if you actually call me. But it's there, and you're more than welcome to text. The way I look at it, I'd rather have you have access to me, and if I'm too busy or doing something else, I just won't respond, or I'll say, look, we're going to talk about it next class. Okay? But at least this way, if you're stuck doing something, right, you can get a hold of me. My office hours are Monday and Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. It's either in this room, which is ET 103, right, or it's directly across through the double doors and straight to the back wall from where I'm sitting. right, in ET 116F, right? So if it's not during class time or at the end of class time or whatever, chances are you'll find me over there, okay? So there is a course website for this class. It's digitaltoolsfordesigners.com or digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. If you type in digitaltoolsfordesigners.com, it'll flip you to Digital Tools for Architects. It doesn't really matter. They both go to the same place. You will visit this website to view your exercises and assignments. So in a little bit, we have a lab exercise today, exercise 101. I will give you a printed sheet like this for you to reference. It's also posted online, so if you weren't here, I don't keep copies. So if you come in the next day and say, hey, do you have the handout for exercise 101? I'll say no, okay? Because it's all posted online. Everything's available. If there are links, if you go to the website, it'll click through on this page, so you have access to all of that. Similarly, all your assignments will be posted on there. There's things like the course syllabus. Let's say you throw out your course syllabus and then you need it again for some reason. You can download it again and print it. Okay. There is a course calendar that I try very hard to keep up to date. It's usually at least a couple weeks out for where we're going, but it'll tell you when assignments are due, what's going on, what the lecture is about, that sort of thing. Okay. You will also, at the end of every lab period, you will post your work to this website. Okay. It's relatively easy. Anybody worked in WordPress before? No? Okay. You'll pick it up real fast. Okay, it's really easy. The first couple times are a little tricky, and then it'll be a total old hat, easy to do. Okay, you'll post those when they're due. You'll post your assignments when they're due. Sometimes I'll ask you for a physical print of a particular assignment that you do. Most of the time, I want the online post. Right, it saves everybody paper and headache and everything else. It's all there. When you post things, they're timestamped, so I know exactly when you turned it in. We'll talk about late work a little bit later. There are also a bunch of tutorials that are written up. There's a bunch of videos that I've done. There's a bunch of screen captures that I've done. All of the lectures, or as many as I can, I try to record so that you guys can watch them later and go back and see what I said. All of that's posted on the website as well. Right? The last thing that you'll do is you'll comment on other students' work through the website. Right? And we'll get in the habit. In the beginning, it's a little hard to get used to, but basically when you come in the door, right, you sit down, you log in, and you make a few comments. And as long as you're doing that, you'll be up to date on comments, and everything will be fine. Right? We'll talk through it. So this is what the page looks like. We'll go through it in kind of a live format in a little bit, so you can see how it all comes together. Okay? The class schedule, you're all here, so that's good. Right? It's 8 to 8:50. We'll be doing the lecture. I know an 8 a.m. class is challenging. Right? I'm here too. Right? I have to get up too. Bring your coffee. Make sure it has a lid on it, though. Right? I'm not a big stickler about food and whatever. Don't tell anybody I'm telling you this. Okay? I'm not a big stickler about stuff, but if it spills, you'll be in big trouble. Right? So don't spill it. Put a lid on it, and we'll be good. Right? But it's an 8 a.m. class, so a lot of people need something to be awake and to be going. Okay? This time slot is rather loose. So I say 8 to 8:50. Right? I tend to lecture for about an hour. Right? 50 minutes. Some days it's short. Some days it's 30 minutes. Some days it's like an hour and a half. Right? It depends on what I'm covering and how much time I need to cover it. Okay? After that, right, we'll start in with the lab section of the class. In between the two, you're more than welcome to take a quick break. A lot of times I suggest you take a break and go outside and get some fresh air or whatever. And then we have a lab for basically 2 hours. So from 9 to 10:50, we have our lab class. Okay? My office hours, as I said before, are Monday and Wednesday, 2 to 3 p.m., right? If you want a different time or you can't do it, as long as it's on Monday or Wednesday, I'm happy to try to make it work, okay? If it's on a different day, it's much tougher because I tend not to be here, okay? A couple things. This is a college class, right? I'm not here to police you. If you have to go to the bathroom, don't tell me, just leave, right? Go do it. If you really need a cup of coffee because you're just sitting up here like, I can't, right? That's going to happen at some point to all of you, I promise you, right? You pulled the all-nighter to work on your other class and you're here at 8. You better be here, right? But you're dying. Go get a cup of coffee and come back, okay? This is not something where I want to police you, right? Obviously, I would prefer that you not leave in the middle of my lecture, right? But during lab period, hey, you got to go do things. You want to go outside. You want to like take a break and get some fresh air. That's okay too, right? It's not so critical for this class. My next class spans lunch, so it's really challenging, especially people that go, this class, then the next class, then they have a class after. It's a pretty long day. Anyway, we're digressing. Course software. Okay, so what are we going to cover in this class? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Adobe Illustrator. So basically the Adobe suite primarily. Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign are the primary ones, right? We'll spend kind of 2 or 3 weeks on each one. All of these software programs, you could take a class that just covers it, right, for the whole semester, right? You could take a Photoshop class and spend 17, 18 weeks just doing Photoshop, right? My goal in this class is not to give you the end-all Photoshop class. It is to give you all the tools you need as an architect or a designer to survive, right, using Photoshop. Does that make sense? So we cram it into 2 or 3 weeks, okay? We will cover some AutoCAD. Okay? AutoCAD is a very complex computer-aided drafting program. It's not possible for me to give you everything you need to know about AutoCAD, right? That really does warrant its own semester. There are classes that cover just AutoCAD for the semester. And so I would encourage you to take those as kind of a separate class, which you can, of course, do. But we will cover enough of it, right, so that you can go do some laser cuts, so that you can go do some of the stuff that you need to survive, right? When you move on to 121, you're going to need to do laser cuts. You're going to need to do some AutoCAD drawings. We're going to give you the skills to be able to do that, okay? We already talked about InDesign, which is the primary graphic layout application. We're going to do a bunch of InDesign work. It's really important as an architecture person or a designer to learn InDesign and to be able to make layouts quickly. My goal is that when you move on to your English class, you might want to, or let's say your history class where you have to put some images in, maybe you'll do your paper layout in InDesign because it'll just be nicer, right? So that kind of stuff, we'll talk through why it's a really good option. We talked about Photoshop. We'll actually start in Photoshop in 4 lectures. We'll start working in Photoshop. We'll do a little bit of some of the plugins and stuff that work in Photoshop. We'll do a little panorama stitching, that kind of stuff, which is kind of an aside. And then we'll do SketchUp. How many people have used SketchUp? I love it. When I first started teaching SketchUp, I'd ask that question. Nobody would raise their hand. They'd be like, SketchUp, what? Right? The good news is you all have a lot of experience in SketchUp already, which is good. We won't spend too much time teaching you how to model in SketchUp because it's pretty intuitive. What we will teach you is a bunch of how do you make SketchUp look good, right? Because SketchUp by itself doesn't look good, right? So we're going to make it look good. And that's a duplicate slide, sorry. There is a book for the class. It's Course Handbook. Looks like this. Right, it's a nice little bound book. It has pages and pages and pages of tutorials that I've written that will walk you through everything we do in this class, okay, step by step. These tutorials are available online as well. I've found that people really like having the book and they like making notes in the margins for what they're doing because a lot of times there'll be a little detail that you'll get lost on. You can write in the book. It's good. Okay? It's available online, not in the bookstore. Right? It's an online publisher that does it. So if you go to lulu.com/spotlight/DTFA, you can get there. There's a link, of course, on the course website as well. Do a Google search for Lulu coupon codes. Lulu is the publisher. All you need to do that Google search. You'll get free shipping. Right? You might get like 25% off or whatever. Right? Try to get some money off if you can. Okay? So that's the handbook. That's required. There is also a recommended text. It's the Layout Workbook by Kristen Cullen. Okay, I should have brought it over. It's over in my office. It's really good for learning graphic design layout stuff. We'll really only use it extensively. A lot of my lectures reference it when we're in the graphic design portion. So when we're doing layouts and InDesign stuff, we'll reference it a lot. I'll show you a lot of images out of it. It's great for learning how to, thank you. So this is the Layout Workbook. Thank you. But it has it talks about a bunch of different layout options, but at the end it has a bunch of examples of how different graphic design layout stuff has come together. Looking through it can be very, very helpful. So it's kind of one of those things you'll learn in courses like, thank you. You'll learn in these kinds of courses that a lot of times you'll get a book, and the books will be really good for bookshelf later on, right? You'll keep it. As opposed to like if you're all English majors, I apologize. I hope that I'm not offending anybody. But you might like be in an English class and you might have to buy some books. And when the semester's over, you're like, can I burn them? Like I'm done with these books, right? The hope is that in architecture, you get books with lots of pictures. They're nice, right? You keep them. You use them for reference later on, right? So it is recommended. You can, of course, get it at the student bookstore, or right, you can order it on Amazon or whatever and have it shipped to you. That seems to be the way everything's going these days anyway. So, the all-important grading question. Oh, you know, I should turn that. You might be able to see it slightly better. So, how are you going to be graded for this class? The good news is there is no midterm and there's no final exam for the class. Those are both good. Okay? Your grade is based on your lab exercises. You'll do your first lab exercise today in class, right? They're worth 20% of your overall grade when you add them all together. It means they're worth about 2.7% of your overall grade each. Okay? Your assignments collectively are worth 40%. There's usually about 7 assignments. I vary it semester to semester depending on how fast we're going and how good you guys are based on what the assignments are. You will have a final portfolio for the class, which is worth 30% of your overall grade. It's due at the end of the semester, and we'll talk about that. That is essentially your final exam for the class, but it's not a sit-down. Like, I'm not going to say, sit down and we're all going to have to do clipping masks or something. There's nothing like that. It's a final product, right? And then you have a 10% participation, right? This is your course comments and that sort of thing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I try really hard in this class, because I know you're in other classes, to make the workload as consistent as possible, right? You come into class, you have lab exercises, we do all of that during the class time. Then you have assignments, right? The assignments usually require some work outside of class. There's usually a little bit of time in lab time, especially if you move quickly through the lab exercises. So you can do a lot of that in class. My idea is that it's consistent, right? You don't have the big spikes. You don't have the big cram sessions, right? It's consistent. You're just kind of moving on, okay? So let's talk specifically about exercises. Like I said, they're worth 20% of your overall grade for the class. The exercise is designed to be completed in the lab portion of the class, okay? So it should only take you those 2 hours to do it. Sometimes people need a little bit more time. That's okay, but you're going to get credit if you're here and do the work for those 2 hours, right? That's the idea. It's due at the end of the lab period, except on rare occasions when I say it's not, but for the most time it's due at the end of the lab period. They're kind of a pass, not pass grading system. If you do it, you get credit. If you don't do it, you don't get credit, right? It's meant for you to learn the skills, right? So I'm not going to go in and critique how good of a job did you do on that clipping mask, or did you isolate the object well enough? Right? Those are not the things for this particular part. It's about learning the techniques. It's about figuring out how to use these programs, right? Some people will move faster through it. Other people will move slower through it. Somebody might be an expert in Photoshop and they might be really slow in InDesign, so things will even out. They'll whiz through the Photoshop stuff and then they'll get to the InDesign stuff and it's more challenging, right? That's normal. The other thing that's normal is there will be people who will pick up on it rather quickly and they will finish early. Okay, so you might have a 2-hour lab assignment and you might be done after 45 minutes or after an hour. Okay, what I ask that you do is not bail and leave and go do something else, right? Pull up some work from another class and work on that, right? You will get to a point in the semester where you're taking, let's say, 121, right? There is always going to be work to do for 121, right? Anybody already taken 121, right? Is there always work to do for 121? Yeah, okay? So chances are there is work for another class that you should be doing, right? So just sit here, you have a great computer to work on, do that work, right? No harm in doing that, right? Try not to waste your time, try not to like float off into Facebook land or whatever, right? Try to be productive. You're here, you're in class, you finished early, be productive. Okay? Assignments. Assignments are generally larger in scope. They usually combine multiple things that we've been talking about. So for example, we work in Photoshop, and then we'll have a culmination assignment for Photoshop, right, where you have to use a bunch of the skills that we've talked about to be able to do the Photoshop assignment. Okay? The assignments will be worth 40% of your overall grade, right? So depending on how many, I can't tell you exactly how much each assignment's worth, but let's say there's 7 assignments, 40 divided by 7, you get the idea, 6% or something of your overall grade each. Okay? The assignments are graded based on the skills that you used, but also on the overall product, right? What does it look like at the end? How good of a job did you do, right? How well composed is it? Those kinds of things. So it's not just, I did all of these skills, therefore I'm going to get an A, right? You want to do a good job. There's a lot of example work that we could show you as well, okay? So the other thing that I debate in asking, and this is always, or an offering, is the fact that I let you improve your grades if you're unhappy. Right? It puts a lot of extra work on my end because I have to regrade things. So I've kind of streamlined the process. So on any of the assignments, right, let's say you turn in your work and you were really unhappy with the grade that you got. Right? Let's say you got a C and you really wanted an A. Okay? You can choose to go back and redo the assignment, right? Get the comments that I've written you, figure out how to change it, etc. You can modify it or you can do a brand new assignment. Okay? You'll submit it. And you'll when you post it, you'll say this is a resubmit, okay? And then at the very end of the semester, on the last day of the semester, right, after you've done with everything, when I do my gradings, I go back and look at anybody who did a resubmit, okay? And let's say you got that C and you really wanted an A on it, you did it, great job on the resubmit, okay? I'm going to look at your overall grade, and at that point, I'll regrade that assignment, and I might grade it up to an A, in which case that grade just went way up, and your grade in the course is probably going to go up. Does that make sense? Okay. That being said, right, it's not automatic. So let's say you got a B on the assignment, and you really wanted to change it and get an A, and what you did ended up being worse than, right, what you did originally. Your grade goes down. Does that make sense? So it's a fresh start on the assignment. So it doesn't mean that it can only go up, right? And that's kind of the risk that you take by submitting regrades. Generally speaking, grades go up on a regrade, okay? So you can do this for each one of the assignments, but you can do it only once for each of the assignments. Does that make sense? Right? So assignment 1, I can do a regrade. Assignment 2, I can do a regrade. If I did assignment 2 and I did a regrade and I didn't like my regrade and I want to do another regrade, you can't do that. Make sense? Okay? So regrades occur at the end of the semester. Final portfolio. The final project for this class is a portfolio of your work. This portfolio can include work from this class, or will include work from this class, but it can include work from outside of this class. So those of you that took 121 already, great opportunity to put in some of your 121 work. Okay? So it doesn't just have to be this. I will, of course, give you specific instruction about it as the semester goes along. It's worth 30% of your overall grade. All too often, and this is my word of caution, people forget about it and don't work on it and don't think about it and then cram it at the end. Okay, and try to do a whole portfolio in 2 or 3 days. Okay, it won't work, and the end result won't look very good. Okay, I've had students in the past who have done this, where they got busy with other classes, didn't spend the time on it, and all of their other work was an A, and they turned in their portfolio, and it was really poor, and it dropped them all the way down to a low B. Okay, so you have to be careful of this. This is designed to be kind of your final project. This is designed to show what you've done in the semester. It's to give you kind of an overall sense of what you've done, and it is, in a sense, your final for the class. So I'm grading you based on how'd you do, right? How much have you learned? How does it look, right? The other thing that's really important about a portfolio, and this is a bit of a side note, is that portfolios are going to be used in this world all the time, right? When you move on to Berkeley or Cal Poly and you're in a class and they're trying to place you in which particular studio subgroup you're going to be in, they're going to say, where's your portfolio? Right? When you decide to move on to grad school, right? The grad school is going to say, where's your portfolio? What's it look like? Right? You want to go get a job, they're going to say, show me your portfolio. Right? So this is part of this academic area is about a portfolio. So it's really important to start early, have a portfolio, work on it, then next semester you work on it some more, then the following semester you work on it some more, you'll add to it, etc. I have a bunch of examples of previous semester portfolios that I'll bring when we start talking about portfolios. You can look through them, you can get ideas, right? The idea is for them to be very, very good. Okay? Course participation. So after each exercise and lab assignment, right, and I'll walk you through the first one, right, so you don't have to do anything today, but next class I'll walk you through it. You're going to give constructive feedback to 3 of your fellow classmates' work. Okay, so you're going to go through and you're going to browse and you're going to write constructive comments. Constructive comments are not, it's so pretty, right? Constructive comments are, I think the color choices that you chose on this particular assignment are good because they blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? So you're trying to give them constructive feedback that's helping them to get better. Okay? And there's a two-edged sword to this, because one, right, I want you to do it because it's going to help your fellow student get feedback, right? It's not possible for me to go through and give everybody feedback, right? There's 32 of you. I can't do it for every single exercise that you do. On every assignment, I'll give you feedback. I'll give you written feedback. But on the exercises, I can't do it. There's just too much, Okay, so you get feedback. You get 3 people saying, this is good, this is bad, you should try this, you should try that. Okay, that's good. The other thing, right, is that you learn how to tell other people what is good and what is bad. You learn how to articulate what's working and what's not from a design perspective, right? So if you just say, it's really pretty or something, it's not giving you anything and it's not giving them anything. Right, so we want those to be really well crafted, carefully constructed. And there's a few things that the website will do. Like if you start, this is pretty, enter. Next comment, this is pretty, enter. Right? The website will say, wait a minute, you're posting too fast. You got to slow down. Okay? And that's so that you have time to think. Right? It also helps spammers not spam the website. But it gives you time to think about it. Okay? So that helps make up your participation grade for the class, which is that 10%. Okay? Materials. You'll be required to use a USB drive to store work for this class. How many people have worked in one of the ET labs before? I've had a class in one of the ET labs. Okay? So for those of you, this is obvious. Okay? For those of you that have never worked in one of the engineering technology labs before, the way these computers work is that they're frozen. So anything that's on them or on their hard drives, right, gets completely wiped away every time they restart. Okay? And unfortunately, power outages happen, right? Things blow up, right? Air conditioners die, all that sort of thing. Hopefully we'll get some air conditioner today at some point. Things happen, right? So if you're not saving your work on your own flash drive, you're running the risk of losing it. Okay? So you need to bring a flash drive. Some people are moving away from flash drives into bringing little mini hard drives in. That's fine too. It doesn't really matter. Right? It's up to you how much money you want to spend. This class, you have to have a 4 GB drive or larger, right? Which really isn't that big. It's pretty cheap now. If you're going to go buy one, I'd go get a 32 gig or larger drive, right? I also ask that you don't have a bunch of other stuff on it. Okay, so if you have a drive left over from last semester and it's mostly full, right, go get another drive, right? Or get rid of the stuff that's on it, right? 32 gig drives are cheap. They're like $8 now. I mean, I remember when a 1 gig drive was like $100, right? So stuff is really cheap. Spending $8 on a flash drive, it'll save you in the long run. The bigger, the better, right? When you move on to the 136 class, all right, or if you're taking the 136 class, you need to have a 32 gig drive, right? Because you're going to fill it up with materials and whatever, okay? Be careful to safeguard your drive, okay? If you come to me halfway through the semester and say, oh my God, I left my drive in my pocket and it went through the wash, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but it's not my problem, right? I'm telling you right now on the very first day of class, it's your job to keep track of your flash drive and not let it get wrecked, not lose it, not leave it behind, not leave it sticking in the computer, right? All of those things. One of the things that I recommend for people, I used to do it, but it doesn't really work because I have to run around so much and I need my keys for that. Attach your flash drive to your key ring. It's really hard for you to leave campus, assuming you drove here, without your flash drive attached to your keys. Okay? So sometimes that'll help. So we'll talk about ways of backing up your stuff. We'll talk about Dropbox and Google Drive and all that stuff as well. But you do need something local. You need a flash drive to be able to work from. Okay? A digital camera is also a recommended tool for the class. It's not required. Most of you have phones now that have decent cameras in them. You can use those. If you have a better, fancier camera, by all means, we'll use that. But if you don't have a camera of any kind, we'll pair you up with somebody that does. Okay? But it's important to get used to working with digital photography, and that's kind of a key part of what we're doing in the beginning. So we'll do that as well. So general guidelines, again, all of this stuff is in the syllabus, but it's helpful for me to go through it. Chances are you guys won't read the syllabus anyway, so at least if I tell you it, it'll stick in your heads. Okay? So if you miss 2 weeks of class or more, you may be withdrawn from the class, right, at my discretion, right? If you will be absent from class, right, I ask that you inform me prior to the start of class, okay? You can text me or you can email me, right? You could call me and leave me a message too, but who does that anymore, right? So just text me or email me and say, hey, I'm not going to be here today, okay? This helps me a lot because I don't wait around. I don't like to start my lectures and have half of you here and then have half of you trickle in, right? It doesn't do me any good. So I tend to wait around for people to get here, right? Because I want you all to hear what I have to say. If you text me and say, look, I'm not going to be here, then I'm not going to wait for you, right? So I'm not waiting around for you to show up. And that's an important thing. It's a courteous thing to do, Okay? If you miss more than 3 assignments, right, or you don't complete them during the semester, you may be dropped or you may receive an F. Okay? Now, I like to add this little caveat, and this is a little bit about my own personal opinion about what a college class is, right? You guys, most of you have been here, you've taken some classes before, okay? This is a college class. College class means that you're responsible for yourself, okay? I think all too often instructors, hold your hand, right? Say, oh, you're not doing very well, I think we should withdraw you or whatever, okay? In this class, I don't want to withdraw you, right? I think you should do well. I think you should want to be here, not be forced to be here, right? It's my job and it's my goal to make this class as awesome and as exciting as I can possibly make it, so you really want to be here, right? And I'll hold up my end. I'll do as the best I can to do that, right? It's your job to hold up your end. It's your job to be here. It's your job to pay attention. It's your job to be awake. It's your job to have coffee so that you're awake, right? Those kinds of things, right? If we're going along in the semester and you just vanish into the ether, right? Right now we have 30 in here plus a bunch of people on the wait list, right? If I could predict who was going to leave, I would kick them out now and let the people on the wait list come in, right? But some of you will vanish into the ether, right? It happens, okay? Take responsibility for yourself and pull yourself out of the class. Don't wait for me to do it. Does that make sense? Right? You guys are responsible people. You do it, okay? If you don't, right, don't come back to me when you get an F instead of being withdrawn, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Assignment due dates, enough doom and gloom. We'll move on. Assignment due dates will be announced in class, right? Assignments are due at the start of lecture, right? So if I say an assignment is due in a week, there isn't one due in a week, but let's say it's due next Monday, okay? That means that you have to have it turned in before 8 a.m. next week. Does that make sense? On Monday next week. So it's due before the start of class, okay? If you wait until 7:59 to try to post it, right, there's going to be a bunch of other people who also waited until 7:59, and it's going to be very challenging for you to post it because everybody's going to be clogging up the website. This happens, right? Give yourself a little time. Post it the night before, right, etc. Exercises are due at 10:50 on the day they're assigned, right? Generally with an exercise, let's say you were working on it all class, right, and it got to be 10:50, and you got a class, you got to go at 11, right? No problem. Go ahead and turn it in. Post however far you got. That's okay, right? It's a pass, not pass thing. You were here, you worked on it, you get credit. That make sense? Okay. All right, late work policy, okay? I don't like late work. I hope you don't like late work either, okay? They're graded down by 10% per day they're late. So let's say the assignment was due today and you didn't turn it in by 8 this morning, right? If you turned it in by 8 on Wednesday, you'd lose only 10%. Okay, 1 letter grade. You had an A, it's now a B. Okay? So after 4 of those, notice we're down to F range, right? So what I do is if it's more than 4 days late, you get a max cap credit of 50%. So it's still better to turn it in than to not turn it in at all. Okay? That's how the late policy works. It's a whole lot better to turn in your work, right, than to not turn it in. Okay? If you have a late work penalty on your work, let's say you turned it in 2 class days late, you had an A, I graded you down to a C, you can't resubmit your work and have it go up, right? The late work is on top of a resubmit too, right? So once you're graded down for late work, you can't make that up. So just turn it in on time, right? It makes everybody's life easier. Additional general guidelines, okay? I'll be available as much as I possibly can for one-on-one and small group help during lab time, okay? There are 32 computers. There will be 32 of you in this class, right? It takes me time to make it all the way around to help everybody and make it back, right? You will see that there will be days where I just keep weaving, right, all day. If you're sitting on one side of the room and I'm over on the other side of the room, right, instead of doing this, which you all do, right, and just waiting and wasting your time, right, lean over and say, Mustafa, do you know how to do this, right? Ask the person next to you. They might know. Right? It's always worth asking. The other thing that's great, Google, how do I do this? Right? That kind of thing. The other thing that people do is they'll bring headphones and they'll listen to the lecture or last semester's lecture and watch me do it, right? So that you're not wasting your time with me on the other side of the room, right? That's not to say I don't want to help you, right? I'd much rather be able to work with each of you one-on-one as much as I possibly can. But there's an economy of how many people you are and how many people I am. right? There's one of me for 32 of you. There's nothing I can do. I'll do the best I can, okay? So try to ask your friends, okay? So try to take notes in your little handbook as I'm doing things, because that will help you a lot, right? If you make notes in the margins, you'll remember, oh yeah, he clicked on that icon, right? I try hard on these to have little pictures of all the icons and the windows and everything of the way it's going to look, okay? But sometimes I miss a picture or it's not there or whatever, so it's always worth going back and having a look, okay? I also try very, very hard to record every lecture, okay, that I do, and that helps a lot because if you miss class, you can go back and watch it, etc. It is not an excuse not to come to class, okay? You still have to be here. The lectures are a bonus. Does that make sense? It's not an online class, right? You have to be here. You have to hear me talk. The other thing is, when you're here, you can ask me a question if something doesn't make sense, right? Even I make mistakes sometimes, and people will point it out. Hey, you messed that up, right? So be aware of that. The other thing that can happen is lectures crash, recordings crash. Sometimes the recording doesn't work, right? Sometimes the sound cuts out halfway through. It just happens, okay? The good news is I have a pretty long backlog of similar lectures from previous semesters, so you can look at one of those if you want to be able to look through it, okay? We covered that, okay? Everything in the class is done under a Creative Commons license, which basically means you don't own anything. You don't have a copyright on anything. We all share, right? It shouldn't be an issue for you. You're in a student role. I think technically speaking, the university or the college owns everything that you create anyway, but whatever. This is just a legal thing. I have to put it in there, right? If you have questions about it, we can talk about it. So let's look at some previous student work just so you can get a sense of some of the stuff we're going to cover in class. We're going to start the semester with photography, and we're going to work through kind of processing techniques for how you can make your images look good. Right? All of these things apply when you move on in your architectural design careers, because you're going to have to take photos of things, you're going to have to take pictures of a site and integrate the building into it. This kind of stuff is very common. And we'll talk about all the post-processing techniques that can make images look good. We'll talk a lot about what composition means, right? And how do we compose particular images so that we get the right amount of movement and we have interesting photographs. Okay? And we'll talk about techniques and what does aperture mean and what does shutter speed mean and that sort of thing as well. Okay? Then we'll move into advanced photo editing, right? And this is where we try to make things that aren't real, right? And so this is the fun in Photoshop when we really get to combine things together to kind of play around, right? And so different people have different strategies. Sometimes they end up on the more creepy side, right? Sometimes they're more realistic. But they're fun kind of art projects, right? For how people see the world and combine things together, right? Some of them are really fun, right? We'll move into layout and graphic design, right? We're going to do a lecture series poster, right? And so everybody's going to do one of these posters. It's not a real lecture series, so you can have whoever you decide come to lecture, which is kind of fun. But it involves a little bit of research, and then it involves a lot of graphic design of how do you make something that's inviting and makes people want to go to the lecture, right? Or be interested in what's going on, right? And there's different strategies for how you do that and what the posters end up looking like. We'll get through a few more. All right, then we'll move into CAD drawing with AutoCAD, right? And these, in all honesty, don't look the best or the most exciting, right? But this is a lot about understanding what scale is and how do lines work and getting the basics so that you could ultimately laser cut something, cut your trusses for 121, that sort of thing, right? And so we'll cover that. These are not the most exciting. We'll talk about collage. We'll talk about being able to use other programs to add textures and colors and that sort of thing to them as well. Right? Then we'll move into 3D modeling and collage. We'll talk about how to do modeling in SketchUp and then how to integrate background imagery, colors, textures, and that sort of thing. So all of these are done in SketchUp. We'll talk about creating sections in SketchUp and kind of how do you work through building up these kinds of images. Right? And so to me, this is very different than just some output from SketchUp. Right? And so we'll work through how do you really add this sort of thing in its various forms. Whether it's plan, whether it's section, whether it's perspective, obviously adding entourage and people and that sort of thing to make your designs feel a little bit more real. So I'll end with the question of what will you create? And I think the start of the semester is always really entertaining because I get a very new group, and this time I don't see a lot of familiar faces. Sometimes I get a bunch of people that I've already had, and so I already know a lot about them. You guys are a bunch of new faces. Part of what makes this class exciting for me is to see what you guys come up with and how you take things. At this point, I don't know anything about you, and I don't know how you're going to steer the class, but we'll customize it for you to make it kind of your own thing. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll say 5 minutes, right? And then we'll come back and we'll talk about exercise 101. If you are in the class, if you're not waitlist or whatever, if you're actually in the class, right, you should be on one of the computers. If you're on the wait list, you should be in the back, right, and we'll fill you in as we go forward, okay? So if you're on the wait list and you're on the computers right now, pack up your stuff and move to the back during the break, okay? Okay, so we're going to get started back up. For those of you on the wait list, I apologize that I shipped you off to the back of the room. I have just a little bit of update for you guys. It looks like I have a full class, so all 30 are here, so I have no no-shows to kick out for you, unfortunately. Good news is I have 32 computers. 2 of them aren't working right now, but they will be. So I'll at least be able to let 2 in, and we'll see how it shakes down. It doesn't look like I'm going to have room for lots of you, though, I have to be honest. So perhaps the 136 would be a good option for you later on if you can make it work into your schedule. But anyway, we can talk individually. I don't want you to leave until I talk to you guys. So everybody on the wait list, I want to make sure I talk to you individually, okay, so we can see where you are and et cetera, okay? All right, so we're going to start back up with exercise 101, which is kind of your first introductory exercise, get you started, get you registered, all that sort of thing for the class. So with 32 of you hacking on the website all at once, right, there's bound to be crashes. It's always a little iffy the first day, right? So be patient when we do this, but hopefully it'll work. So I went ahead and I went to Digital Tools for Architects, Digital Tools for Designers. Like I said, it's the same site. I want to point out some things for what the site looks like and how it kind of runs together. Under the About tab here, we have, you guys are in 135. That's where the syllabus is, the calendar is, and the calendar feeds. We'll talk about what the calendar feeds are in a little bit, actually next class. Yeah, I think it's next class. And so you can go through it. Lectures here, right, are listed. Right, again, you're in 135, so you'll be looking here. Looks like I need to update that to say designers. Like I said, they just changed the name of the class, so I have to get used to that. You'll be in fall 2015. Notice that there's a bunch of previous semesters, right? So you can go back and look at old lectures if any of those matter. When we look at lectures, right, you'll get a page in reverse chronological order, so the newest one will be on top, right? So here we have lecture 101. If I were to click on lecture 101, right, it will bring up lecture 101. There's usually this warning if I'm not logged in. It's a reminder to log in because there's content that I hide for when you're not actually logged in. It's a way of protecting copyright and that sort of thing. When you're logged in, all of this stuff will show up. You can see that I have this year's lecture video will go here. Below it, I have previous semester's lecture videos, so you can go back and watch any semester that you wanted, or if something happened and the sound cut out or whatever, you can do it, or I haven't posted it yet. I also tend to have lecture downloads of the PDFs that I showed. So I did the keynote PowerPoint slides. All of those will be posted. Basically, anything that I show or do should be posted on one of these pages. So that's the lectures. Then if we move over into exercises, you're again in 135. Fall 2015, this is where the exercises will be posted. And so if we click on exercise 101, right, this is today's exercise. This is exactly what I've been doing. Gives you live links, obviously, in it. And you can walk through step by step for what it is. I gave you the handout for it as well. Right? Some people, I've always debated, should we just not do the handouts at all? But some people like to have the handouts because they like to take notes on them. So I just give you the handouts too. Anyway. If I was logged in, I'd be able to download the PDF of this and reprint it or save it. Okay? So we'll talk about that in just a second. So we move on into the login phase. Right? So this is part 1. This is what we're talking about. If you are trying to navigate there, there's a login button
on the far right here. If you click on that, right, it'll take you to this login screen. You guys may or may not be registered. If you've been in the class before, you're already registered, in which case, if you were in the other class, for example, you already have an account. If you need help retrieving it, we'll go through it and we'll find it again for you, right, if you forgot your password. So the rest of you are going to click on the register link at the bottom here, and it's going to say register for this site. It's going to ask for a username. Now, when you pick your username, please don't pick something that is not related to your name, right? I have to find all of you by your usernames, right? So if it's, you know, SexyDaddy123, I'm not going to know who SexyDaddy123 is. Does that make sense, right? So like first name dot last name, first initial last name, right? Something like that. Hopefully it has your last name in it. That would be helpful, right? But it's actually up to you in terms of what you pick, right? Then it's going to ask you for an email. I assume in this day and age that all of you already have email addresses, okay? The thing about this email is you're going to have to be able to log into it right after you click this registration. So hopefully it's a Gmail or a Yahoo or an Outlook or something like that, okay? Fill that in. Doesn't have to be your school email. I could care less about your school email. It should be the email that you actually use, okay? So, you know, whatever it is, you'll go ahead and type that in as your email. And then under the invitation code box down here, right, you're going to type DTFA student, right, all capitals, right, and that will give you an actual registration. Okay, DTFA student. Okay, and then you go ahead and click on register. Now again, there's 30 of you that are going to try to do this, so it may take a little bit of time for the website to decide to catch up.
Just a note that it was in my spam folder.
Ah, yes. So once you have clicked that register link, right, the website is going to send you an email, right, that you will then have to go find the temporary password to be able to log in. A lot of times it'll ship that into your spam filter, right? So look in your spam inbox if you haven't gotten it yet, because it's probably there. We'll find yours in a little bit. So Wendy, you're first on my wait list, so why don't you come to this computer? We'll fill you in. And then Matthew, I'm going to move you here if we can get the computer to start. Okay, so you can go ahead and come up. Okay, so once you've logged in, and some of you won't be there yet, some of you are still in the process, but I want to keep going because those you can kind of follow along anyway, and then we'll go around and help you all individually. Once you are able to log in, go ahead and not save this, you'll see that there's a black bar that appears at the top of the page that wasn't there before. That's how you know that you're logged in, okay? And you'll still see the same website just as it looked before, right? But what we're going to do is go to the back end of the website. And this is where you're going to do the posts and that sort of thing. And I'll walk you through that part as well. So I'm going to go ahead and come up here to where it says Digital Tools for Designers. And I'm going to click on what's called the dashboard, okay, which takes me from the front end of the website, the part that you see, to the back end of the website, which is the part where you do your posts and that sort of thing. Okay? And so that then brings me to this dashboard. Now, I have two accounts. I have an administrator account that has a lot more stuff on it. This is my faux student account so that you can see what you're going to see essentially. Okay? On the left-hand column here, you have a couple categories that matter. Posts is what you're going to post, right? So you do your exercise, it's going to be in posts. You have the ability to see all of your old posts and edit them, and you also can add new posts, right? We'll skip through media. Comments is where you can see comments, right? And then down here you have something called Profile. And I would encourage you all to click on Profile first. And we'll go through Profile a little bit more carefully. But at the bottom of Profile, you can see that there's a spot where you can put in a new password, and then you can repeat the password. Okay? Because whatever the random string of numbers that WordPress sent you, right, the digital tools site sent you, you're probably not going to want to remember. So, right, so you can put in something else. Okay? That being said, we'll have a whole lecture about passwords and security and stuff, so you may end up changing it more than once. But for now, it can be, you know, your dog's name 123 or whatever your normal password is. Okay? So that's just for your own sanity to be able to hit escape like 4 or 5 times. See if it'll just keep hitting escape. And we'll see if it's having issues. We'll try it again.
Oh, wait, I got it.
Yeah. So anyway, you can change your password there. So what you're going to ultimately do is we're going to move on to part 2 of the exercise. And this is where I'm going to have you create your first post. And so I need to do a little bit of background research before I create that post, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to find some kind of an interesting architectural article or blog or something that we find interesting. So maybe we'll go to ArcDaily. And we'll say, this looks kind of interesting, right? So this is the Mudclad Museum for Rural Labor, whatever. Let's say I found that interesting. Okay. So I want to have a picture ultimately. So let's take a look at this, right? And let me go ahead and save image as, and I'm going to put this on the desktop, right? So that I can use the image later on. Then we'll go back, and I have a web address here. Okay, so I'm going to leave this open, but I'm going to ultimately use this web address. So I'll go ahead and copy it for now, since I'm on that page. Okay. Now I just picked whatever the first one that came up is. Spend a little bit of time and think about something that might actually be interesting to you, right? I have to be honest, I'm not really interested in Mudclad Museum for Rural Labor, but whatever, right? It's just an example. Okay. So then I'll flip back over to the digital tools site, and I'm going to create my first post. Okay. So I'm going to come over here to Posts. And I'm going to go to Add New. Right? I could also come up here and go to New Post. Either way, it's exactly the same place. And this will then bring up your, basically it's like a text editor. It's kind of like a Word document, so to speak, with a few more options. Okay? So up here at the top, I have the option to put a title. So usually it's Exercise 101. And we'll say it's by me. Okay? Then here in the content field, right? And I know it's hard on the screen because you can't see the little boxes, right? To know where to click. You should be able to see it a little bit better on your screen. But this is basically like a word processor, right? So I can type whatever it is that I want. So this was, what was it? Russia's tiny museum. That's Mudclad. Right? And so this works just like, Word, right? If I wanted, right, notice I can't spell, right, so we'll fix that. I could make something bold if I wanted to, right? So these kinds of things, I could justify center. I mean, you get the general formatting, right? This should be intuitive for you, okay? I want to post a link next, right? So remember, I came over here, and I took my link, and I went copy. I can just paste that in place, paste, and it'll show up as a link. Notice that this isn't actually clickable yet, so I'm going to highlight it and click on this little chain icon. Oh, it looks like it is already. There's the ability to check the link, so it's there. Now it's going to turn blue for me. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of a summary, right? So you might do summary of article, right? And then the last thing that would be nice is if I had a picture, right? So I already went here and I saved the picture. So remember, I just clicked on it and then I right-clicked on it and say Save Image, put it on the desktop for now. And I'll come back and I want to actually post a picture. And so what I'll do is over here on the right side, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the very bottom, right? And there's something called Featured Image way over here in the corner. And I'll click on Set Featured Image. And if I'm going a little fast for you or you're not following, don't worry. We'll go through and we'll make sure everybody does this, right? And here is where I can upload work. And you'll see that there's a bunch of work that's been uploaded in previous semesters that just keeps going on and on and on. Right? You guys will add to this and create your own stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a file. I don't want to pick one of the previous ones. We'll click on Upload a File. I'll click on Select Files. And maybe, just maybe, it'll let me pick. Come on. All right, it's being annoying, so we will drag from the desktop. Oh, really? Don't you love it when stuff doesn't work for you, right? Well, we'll give it a little time to think. Oh, how nice. Like I said, first day it's always a little iffy. There's a lot of people accessing it all at once. So why don't I pause the recording for a little bit. You guys find your articles and get that part of it ready, and then I'll show you the balance of this once it decides to come back. OK, so I switched browsers, and now it appears to be happy. Chrome, I guess, was unhappy. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go to my desktop and pick the image that I saved. There it is. We'll go ahead and click Open, and we'll see that it'll upload this image. And it takes a little bit of time to process. And once it's done, the Set Featured Image button will let me click on it. OK, there it is. I'll go ahead and say Set Featured Image. Okay. In the process, because I had to switch, I lost it. So exercise 101. Right. And text goes here. OK, so the other thing that I want to do is over here on the right side under Categories, right? We want to make sure that we categorize it correctly. OK, so we're going to scroll down here and find, right? This is Digital Tools for Designers. That's not an assignment, it's an exercise. Here's the exercises, exercise 101. OK, so I check those boxes. It'll properly categorize the post. Right? I have my featured image, which we can now see down here at the bottom. Okay? I have my text, I have my title, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Publish. Okay? And this is effectively when you click on Publish, that is turning it in. Okay? So I've now turned it in. The good news is you can go back and edit. So you see I just said this text goes here. Right? I can go back in, I can change that, and I can update it. Okay? And so we'll let it finish its publish. And I'm going to open a new tab so that we can see it. Okay, so on the home page, right below the splash images here, there's a student work section. Right? This is in reverse chronological order. I just posted it. It shows up here. Okay, as Wendy, when you post the next one, it'll go right next to it. Right, and it'll keep shuffling over to the right. Now, sometimes you want to see all of the student work for a particular exercise. We can go to Student Work, Digital Tools for Designers, Exercise 101. And when I click on this, it'll take us to a group of all the Exercise 101s. That's why the categories are important. So we can go backwards here, and we can see all the posts that people have ever done for Exercise 101 back into Never Never Land. Okay? So all of that's categorized. That's why the categories are important. Okay? Likewise, under Student Work, we could go to Assignments, and we could go to Assignment 101, and we'd see all of the Assignment 101s. Right? So you see how it lets you navigate through and see what other people have done and what other people have posted on. Furthermore, right, it makes it really easy to comment because you can see, oh, I need to make some comments for Exercise 101, and they can all go there. Okay? Likewise, right, if I come back here, I apologize, I logged into my administrator account this time because I had the other one open. But you can, under all of your posts, right, so if I click on all posts, it's being a little slow, it will show me a list of all the posts that I've made. So all the assignments and all the exercises that I've turned in. Right? And so I'll have a list of those. Right, and so this is, I apologize, I get everybody's posts because this is my administrator account, so I see everything. But you guys will have a list of just your posts. Okay? Okay, so that's the post. So your assignment or your exercise for today in 101 is to register. Okay, that's first. Make sure that you're registered. Second is to make this post. Right? Once you've done those two things, you're free to go. Okay? I do want to collect the survey so that you all filled it out in the beginning. I want to make sure I get those back. Okay? Likewise, on the back page of your syllabus, right, there's a survey about what your interests are, what your classes are, what your skill levels are. If you wouldn't mind pulling that off, filling it out, and giving it to me, it gives me kind of a preview of what you guys all have as experience, what you're interested in, and that sort of thing. It helps me to tailor the class a little bit. So I would appreciate it if you spend a little bit of time and fill it out. So you will give me those two things, and you'll make your post, and then you'll be able to go have some coffee or whatever and get ready for your next class. Okay? Remember, I want to make sure that I talk to each and every person on the wait list so that we can kind of sort out where you are and where you stand. Okay? Are there any questions? No? As the people who are in the class start to leave, if the waitlist people want to come and do the registration and stuff, you're more than welcome to do that as well.